Okay, so today, I'm going to talk about space in your body and why that's important to breathing, to moving, to supporting your body weight everywhere. So I had some friends over the other night, and one of them was talking about her husband that just had neck surgery. I think it was related, or shoulder surgery, one of the two. And she said, his shoulder's better and his neck's better, but it's not 100%. And he can do this or whatever. And I said, but you know what? And then another person said, well, I can't do that either. I do this, it hurts. And I said, well, you're moving your shoulder incorrectly. You're moving your body incorrectly. The most important thing is that you have to learn how to breathe first. And what that means is you have to be able to bring the air and oxygen up to where it needs to go to support that joint. If you cannot, if you're too tight other places, you're going to have problems with that joint up here in the shoulder. If you're tight in your hip or in your knees or in your ankles, or they're not moving right, or you're flat-footed, you don't have pumps to bring the oxygen back up to where it needs to go from the bottom of the body to the heart and to the brain. It needs to be refilled and regenerated. So what happens when we don't move right in our feet and in our legs, we start using another joint, which is the shoulder and the neck. Okay? So then the doctor says, you have a shoulder problem. Of course you do. But where is the problem coming from? The bottom. You're not using your calves. You can't feel your toes. Well, why can't I feel my toes? Maybe I have an issue in my spine. We all have something as we get older because we've used our bodies incorrectly. So I teach you how to use your body correctly so that you can move with fluidity, if there's such a word, grace, meaning sitting in the car, not coming out going, is anybody looking, and flapping out like my mom used to do. So let's practice standing. Standing correctly is so hard. People stand like this. They stand like this. They stand like this. They stand like this. Standing is hard, especially when your spine is compressed. And when I'm talking about the spine from the top of the head to the bottom. The bottom, there's that tailbone. The tailbone is supposed to curve, or the coccyx bone area, right underneath. That's supposed to support your butt. I call that the dump. Here's your dump. How are we going to support the dump? Well, we use the front of the dump truck to support our dump. The front of the dump truck can't support this dump. The dump is gone because you've been sitting in the chair and the dump has gone down into the front. This dump has to come out to shoot it out and leave it at the dump. It can't shoot out if you can't exhale, Because if you push from the back, you lift up the back of the dump truck, how are you going to push it back? You've got to have a hydraulics here in the front pushing this back. So the back has to round, the spine has to be flexible to push the dump out of the truck, or push the load out of the dump truck. And you can't tighten here and expect that to push all the load out. You want to push all the load, that might help. So if you think about the dump truck, the front of the dump truck, it starts coming up like this to let the load of gravel out. Look what happens. You're exhaling. What exhale means, you're lowering your center of gravity. How? You're letting your air float down to the floor. Well, I went like this. I stopped it. Let it float down to the floor, but I can't. I'm stuck here in the middle part of the dump truck. Okay, so think of yourself as a tripod. Front of the tripod is the front of the truck. The back of the tripod is going to be the back of the dump truck, where you're going to let the load out, your dump. If you want to let this load out, you don't do this, because that's going to bring the load back up and in. So how are we going to get it out? We have to shake it out, especially at the very end when you're getting all of that load out of the dump truck. Okay? The dump truck goes like that, right? That's the bounce. How do you bounce? You can't bounce if you're holding your breath. Exhale, inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale, inhale, exhale, inhale. As you're exhaling and inhale, that's moving the blood and the oxygen all around the joints, all around the circle. A joint is a circle. It's going in and out. The center of your body right now, it changes. It's going to be the tripod, and the two sides, the base, it's going to be right underneath the rib cage, those oblique muscles or abdominal muscles. You've got to pull those muscles, or I'm going to say, if you can't think of a tripod, think of the two columns coming back, right? And the front, the main force of the house, the loading beam as the front, and the two columns in the back to support the load on that one beam. Okay? Here's the columns. You've got to pull those columns back. To pull those columns back, you have to let go of what we call the hip flexor, or where the leg meets the trunk. Same goes all the way down into the thigh. Well, if your thigh is too tight, you can never pull the load back to the two columns. If you start letting go of the thigh and pulling back with the two columns, that's your hamstring. But wait, your ankle doesn't touch the floor, or your heel doesn't touch the floor. There's a little fascia underneath that little muscle. Fascia covers the muscle. Underneath that covers that muscle on the heel. So let's think about the skin of the heel. Let's let the skin and the heel go down into the floor. That floor is not level. We don't want the floor ever to be level, because we want to be able to move, constantly moving around that floor. If you constantly move around your floor, you're automatically exhaling and inhaling, because you're becoming a pump. Your pulmonary system is basically your pump, and your circulatory system is a pump. The blood and air are pumps. So we let go, and somebody says, the diaphragm. Well, sure, the diaphragm's here. Let's let the diaphragm go and relax. When you let the diaphragm go and relax, you can start to feel that you're standing on something that can push you back up. But if you lift up from here because your hip is too tight or because you didn't make it a tripod, you can't dump the load right. So if our butt is tight because we've been sitting on it, we can't dump the load. So we're constantly doing this, and what happens? Our pelvis hikes up in the back. So let's go back to standing. We're not going to be standing on a level surface. That's why there's this thing called a bosu. This is a rounded ball with a flat thing on it, on the bottom, and then sometimes we turn it over, and then there's a flat with a round on the bottom. But for purposes of us, let's think about sitting on a half of a ball, standing on a half of a ball. On a trampoline. Well, I said air is like water. So you're standing on water. If you're standing on water and you're tight in your joints, look what's going to happen. Over time, you're going to develop a neck and a shoulder problem. So you have to let go and exhale. And when you exhale, you can't exhale like this. You have to exhale and let that dump truck, the load, go back. That's where a weight comes in, right? But we don't walk around with weights. But the weights help force us to move and help force us to stretch sometimes. So what's going to happen here? You have skin, right, around your rear and around the spine. That skin is going to stretch. The fascia is covering the muscle, and we're going to take that fascia and we're going to push it the opposite direction of the skin. The fascia is pushing the muscle forward and the skin's going backwards. So in essence, you're creating more space in the tailbone area, the coccyx bone area, the craniosacral area. This area and this area are crucial to getting air. This is your pump coming up from your feet. This is your pump coming down from your brain, and it joins together in your heart. The heart is a star burst. It goes like this. It sends blood to the brain down. If you're tight like this, your blood can't circulate. If you're tight like this, oxygen, your lungs can't expand and contract. What stops your lungs from expanding and contracting? We have tight rib cage. Tight right here. If it's tight right here, guess what? Your pelvis is going to be tight. Pelvis is taut right here. We release the pelvis. As we release the pelvis, say this is your center of your tripod. Here's your two columns. Now, I'm not moving anything. All I'm doing is expanding and contracting my air in my belly, and that's where the breathing comes from. You have to learn how to use your pump in order to have balance. I did not use balance on this side right. I can tell I'm tight. So I need to release this side. How am I going to release it? Stretch. All you do is you exhale, okay? You have two columns. You have your tripod. That releases that hip flexor, which releases the outside of that hip. Am I going to move that hip over? No. I'm going to expand the air, right? As I expand the air, that's going to allow me to have more space in that joint of the hip, around the knee and the ankle. How am I going to lift this up from here? No, not my back. I would imagine that there's water or air coming up from here. So when we move, in order to have more mobility, we have to move with little range of motion if we have something is compromised. We have to imagine that water and air are always supporting, and if we can't bring the water and the air up from the bottom and also down from the top, which is gravity, and meet in the center, we're going to have a problem navigating standing up. Our tripod can be this way, that way, this way, that way. It moves. We need to be able to roll in a circle. So when I'm standing, I like to stand and make my 2 columns here. That puts all the pressure on the outside of my body, and I don't have enough, I'm not thinking about the muscle coming in together, right, to pump. I'm not using my abdominals to hold myself down. If I want to stand like this, I really have to have strong abdominals to pull myself in. And I need to be able to really use that ball that's in the center and squeeze it in without moving my hips. So as I bring the air in together, it takes the pressure off of my hips. It takes the pressure off of the hip all the way back to here, which connects to the back. I'm not going to use the outside of my butt and my ankles because I'm going to start, this expands, this contracts, and it supports my spine around the vertebrae. I want to go up 1 vertebrae at a time, so I'm going to go around in a figure 8. 1, stop. 2, when I get to the center of that vertebrae, I want to go around it and release it. I'm going to drop the air down. I'm going to exhale. I'm going to let the skin extend. I'm going to let the fascia push the muscle forward. 1, 2, and I have to bring the body in the air with me. All the way down to the feet and the ankles. So if we hold on for dear life with our toes and wrong in our feet, we have feet problems because we put the pressure on the wrong point because something hurt along the way. When our first injury, we're done, really, because we start walking differently. When you have surgery, you're tight or something, you have to walk differently because you don't want to put pressure on that point or before surgery. So your body's forever changed. So mobility, breathing are key to healing and circulation. So the doctor says, or you say, I have a knee problem, I'm not going to move. You've got to circulate. You've got to circulate. You've got to get that dump out of the trunk. That butt is a pump. It's dead. How are we going to get that pump to start working? We have to exhale. Here's our pump. Gravity is going to push that pump down. So that gravity is your hydraulics. Hydraulics back to jump that load back here. Hydraulics right here. Hydraulics. The 2 columns, right? Tripod. Hydraulics. Push. Shins. Back to the heel. The heel has a little spring in the step. That's your bounce. Because you have an arch. Well, we let the arch go, and we went like this. So it all translates from the bottom and also from the top. I haven't even talked about from the top. That's a whole nother can of worms. But basically, think about gravity is up on top. It's pushing down on the 2 sides of your head and the center of your head. The spine comes down. It goes through the center, your tripod, back down. We don't push down with that. 1, 2, 3, 4. 2 columns in the tripod. So if your neck is always like this and you don't move the neck in all the different planes of motion with your chin forward and your jaw backward, you're going to have a problem also in your shoulder. So the tripod, front of the tripod is here. The two columns, the tripods are here. And that, my friends, is a lesson for today.